Good afternoon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar for NJCounts 2019, Planning Your Local Outreach to and Communication with the Press. I'm just making sure that I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our NJCounts 2019 webinar, Planning Your Local Outreach to and Communication with the Press. Thank you to all of us for joining. You are right now in listen-only mode, but we will have time at the end for questions, and we certainly welcome your questions and hope to make this webinar as interactive as possible. This is Kate Kelly. I'm an associate with Monarch Housing, and I work with our ending homelessness team around NJCounts and helping with communication with the press and getting the word out around the messages about the count. And I'm going to introduce my fellow presenter. We're very happy this afternoon to have joining us Lisa Marlowe, who's the communication specialist with the National Low Income Housing Coalition. She has a great deal of experience on working on getting communication out about public policy issues relating to creating more affordable housing, and we thought she would have a great perspective and information to share that can help us in getting the most out of working with the press around NJCounts. Just a few questions and things to think about as we're going through this webinar. We're going to give you some general tips when speaking with the press and something that would be helpful for you to think about what your goal is in reaching out to the press. What are your key messages around ending homelessness? With this year's NJCounts event, messages that we've been thinking of here at Monarch are just reminding the public that this is a required year for the HUD count, that HUD requires every other year for a full count of the homeless to be done, including the unsheltered count. So this is a year where the unsheltered count is required. We're still continuing with the drumbeat message that more funding is needed for affordable housing. We'd like to remind folks in the public hearing about NJCounts that an important theme is that we know that there are frequent users of emergency and shelter services who are using these services, and who we know if they were housed in affordable housing with appropriate services, we could meet their housing needs and help them stop becoming such frequent users. The state of New Jersey is certainly making the important connection between healthcare and housing and how important it is to get those who are unsheltered into housing. There are, a few initiatives around the state working with hospitals to pilot supportive housing and affordable housing for individuals with healthcare-related issues and homelessness. We found with the NJCounts 2018 report, which I hope you all saw, that came out in October. If you haven't seen it, I can certainly share that after this webinar, but we found there was a great deal of racial disparity around who is homeless, and so we will work in conducting the count and writing of the report in 2019 to, again, highlight that disparity and make recommendations where we can. We know a lot of you in your local counties are doing really good work in ending homelessness and using best practices. So when it comes time for you to share the materials we put together around NJCounts with your local press, we hope that you will highlight what the good work that you're doing locally. Something also you should be thinking about is who your press contacts are. Are there newspapers? We know there are shrinking newspaper markets in New Jersey, but are there regional and local newspapers that you have contacts with? Are there online media sites such as patch sites? Are there cable network and the traditional network television stations and/or radio that you work with? So those are all examples of outlets or categories of outlets where we can work with existing and work to get new press contacts. something that the press will want to do is connect with local agencies who are working to end homelessness. So if you are working at the county level and are not actually serving individuals who are homeless, you might want to think about, if you're going to get a call, which you hopefully will, from the press, who can you connect them with in your county who is working directly to end the homelessness, would be able to give more frontline perspective in addition to the more county broader perspective. And would the folks in those local agencies be able to connect the press with individuals and families who have in the past experienced homelessness, who are currently homeless, or maybe they've moved into affordable housing? Folks in any of those categories would be of interest to the press. And something to think about is the actual day of the count. It may be hard to find people, understandably, because of confidentiality reasons, who at a Project Homeless Connect or other event would be willing to speak with the press. But we just encourage you to think about if you could have 4 or 5 spokespeople lined up who you can refer reporters to. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone at one of the events that day. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who has some slides that she's going to present. And Lisa, if you just want to prompt me with next at the end of each slide, I will move your slides along for you.
Sure. Thanks, Kate. So again, my name is Lisa Marlowe. I'm the Communication Specialist at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. I'm very honored to be on this webinar. I was invited to present some national perspective on how to garner a little bit more media attention around NJCounts. So again, I primarily work with national reporters, and I primarily manage the coalition's social media accounts. So I'm going to provide you with some tips on how to gain a little wider access to the press, as well as how to utilize social media. So one of the tips that I'm going to share is the use of media toolkits. And you'll see on the slide that I have some bullets that you can include in a toolkit. Of course, this is just a toolkit. A successful toolkit doesn't have to include all of these bullet points, but it would be great if it could include all or most. The first thing are just, of course, national and state talking points. You want to be sure to hopefully gather some national and state talking points that you could share with your partners to just reduce the amount of work and research that they might have to do if they want to communicate the message about the count to their networks. You just want to be sure to have it in the toolkit in one place that they can reference. Again, you want to pull some national talking points. So for instance, you can pull the national housing wage, but then you also want to pull some state talking points. So for instance, you may want to reference the average renter's wage in New Jersey. You want to think through some possible frequently asked questions, and you can do that by just surveying conversations in the news, on social media, seeing what people are talking about, seeing if anything is inaccurate, anything that you want to counterpoint. You could include those questions and those responses in a toolkit. You also want to possibly include some sample tweets and Facebook posts in the toolkit. Again, you just want to make sure to compile as much information as possible for your partners so that they can basically just kind of copy and paste some things. Of course, you want to encourage them to modify a tweet or a post however they seem fit, but you really want to give them the foundation to work from. You just want to remember that reporters and stakeholders are on social media. So even if a reporter may not reach out to you directly for a comment or for an interview, they may follow you or someone else in your network on social media. So you want to be sure that you prep your partners with good information to share and use on social media. You want to be sure to share any images or graphs as well, or any fact sheets. Please note that images receive a higher impression rate or engagement rate on Twitter and Facebook. So basically all that means is that when somebody is scrolling through a news feed, they're more likely to stop and review a tweet that's accompanied by an image or a graph, and they're more likely to share that tweet if it's accompanied with an image. You might want to consider including a sample press release template. And again, I think Kate had mentioned that you want to make sure that your high-level messages are in that press release, but you also want to maybe include some quotes from some resident leaders, some national organization leaders, or maybe a state or local leader. You probably don't want to include more than 3 quotes in your press release. And you want to make sure that they're from at least 3 different sources. And just remember that a lot of reporters, because they have so many things coming at them, a lot of times they'll just copy and paste a press release. So you really want to give them some good, meaty content to copy and paste. Next slide. So tips for getting media attention. Of course, you want to pitch the right news hook. So again, you just want to sort of survey the current events and think about how that relates to your data. So for instance, the new Congress just obviously started. So we want to be sure. So some of the messaging that we're crafting now is to tell Congress that this information, what information is available, that Congress needs to, in the new session, they could be considering, looking at this type of policy change because that's the current event. So we want to make sure to connect current events to our data. We want to make sure to pitch to the right person. You can do that by using a tool called Meltwater. It is a paid subscription service, but they do track reporters, and they can identify the right reporter with the right beat. You can also use another paid subscription service called Muckrack, or you can just use the free Google Alert service. You can set up a Google Alert with a keyword search, and you can see what reporters are reporting on based on that keyword search, and you could possibly reach out to that reporter directly. A lot of times in news stories, reporter contacts are included in those news stories, so you can definitely connect with that reporter over Twitter or directly through email. My suggestion is that if you do choose to circulate a press release, you want to do that at about a week before the data goes live, because that gives reporters enough time to write about the story. It brings the data to the reporter's attention before it goes stale, and it gives them enough time to write about the news story and reach out to you for comment. And it doesn't get lost in any other type of news shuffle if it's about a week in advance. I found that that's sort of a sweet spot. Also, too, when you actually do push out your press release, when the data goes live, you want to be sure to provide a link to the press release through your social media networks. And also, too, another key tip is that you may want to, again, through those Google Alert searches or through the Meltwater searches, identifying key reporters, you may just want to give those key reporters a call or email them with just a heads up saying, hey, I know that, you wrote the story about, the connection between rent affordability and homelessness. Did you know this information about NJCounts? So that, that's just to further, again, highlight the press release for some key reporters. Next slide. So again, tips for talking to reporters. You want to be sure that before, if you do get an interview, you want to be sure that you review any main points before the interview. You really want to focus in on 2 to 3 key main points that you really want to convey. A lot of reporters, they will only ask for about 15 minutes of your time. That's because they already know the story, but they just need for you to reiterate 2 or 3 key points and possibly get a quote. Again, you want to make sure to know and be cognizant of the fact that everything is on the record. Reporters are really good at being casual. They try to get the candid quote from an expert, but you want to be sure that be aware that everything's on the record, that it's really not a social conversation, that it's really your words are going to be quoted in black and white or digitally. You want to make sure to steer the reporter to the bigger picture. Even though it's about New Jersey counts, you want to make sure to make them aware that it's a systematic problem. If they try to focus in or talk about something else, you want to be sure to try to learn to pivot to your specific key messages. You want to connect any of your local issues back to the national problem, again, going back to the fact that this is a systematic problem. You want to make sure your points are brief and simple, avoid any jargon, kind of keep note that some papers are written for 3rd or 6th grade level, so you want to avoid any type of housing jargon. It's also okay to say, I don't know. It's better to say, I don't know, and let me refer you to a source that may know than to be quoted and then it's not accurate. And then again, you always want to end the interview by repeating your key messages and your key takeaway. Next slide. So tips on social media. So again, I think your hashtag is NJCounts 2019 or NJCounts 19. You want to be sure to try to include that hashtag in any type of post that you do in social media. The importance of hashtags are just to follow a conversation or to track a conversation. So if you wanted to see if someone else is talking about it, or if you wanted to start a conversation about this data, the best way to do that is by including a hashtag. You can also look at what happened several days afterwards under this hashtag. And so it's just important to try to keep the conversation going under the hashtag so people can know that this group of people are talking about this particular topic. Again, you can use your toolkit to incorporate any sample tweets or Facebook posts. And again, you want to be sure to include any images or graphs because of, again, visual messaging has a higher impression rate. And then again, you want to be sure to circulate any type of information that you have on social media. And you just kind of want to keep an eye out for what's happening, current events, to see if there's an opportunity to do an op-ed or a letter to the editor. The difference is the letter to the editor is usually a response to an already published article. It's a quick, typically 150 to 200 word response, whereas an op-ed is a longer piece, usually about 700 words to something that you actually submit the topic to an editor to think about. Next slide.
So I just wanted to highlight some of the social media outlets that we use at Monarch and that we will be using around NJCounts 2019, and then we hope that you will use. We use Facebook. You can use Facebook video. There's a Twitter account, Twitter accounts and Instagram. So the hashtag NJCounts we've used over the past, I believe it is, 5 years. And that's, as Lisa was saying, reporters can either look up what's being publicized about the event leading up to the event or after the event. So we will include the hashtag in our press materials that we send out, and we will let reporters know that they can follow the event on Facebook, that they can feel free to post Facebook videos, that you all as local partners can post videos on Facebook, that reporters can tweet about it, that we'll be tweeting about it, and that we'll be using Instagram. So these links take you directly to the social media accounts that Monarch uses, but you should feel free to use your own social media accounts and use the hashtag. And I'm just going to move on now to Lisa's next slide.
So I just wanted to leave everyone with this last little soundbite, is that we live in a soundbite world. Don't repeat a negative. No one hears the not in your statement. So again, that's just reminding everybody that everything is on the record, whether you're having a conversation via social media or a phone interview. Be clear and stay on message. Convey your key points at the beginning of the interview and reiterate them at the end. Have other sources available. Just in case, again, you come up against a statement that you don't know, you want to be sure to say, I don't know, but let me refer you to another source. Again, remember that interviews are not social conversations, and assume that they are part of of a conversation that will, for the purpose of gaining a statement or a quote. If a reporter or someone on social media is being negative, don't repeat the negative element or respond negatively. Instead, provide a positive response on steps, references, data that can be a solution to the issue or situation. So that's all that I have, Kate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. I have a few more slides that I'm going to go through, and then we want to certainly open it up for questions from those of you who are on the call. Just thinking a little bit more logistically, reporters who reach out to you prior to the event are going to want to know the details about the logistics of the local count, when your street count is happening, how the shelter count is being done, which is most likely being done through your homelessness management information system, your HIMIS system. They'll want to know why the local count is being conducted. So, as I said earlier, this is a HUD mandated year for the street count, but also letting them know that beyond it being a HUD mandate that the count is done, how having these local numbers helps you plan, to more effectively end homelessness in your community. Letting reporters know who is counting locally. Oftentimes there are a number of folks who have experience in the field but are going out to do the count as volunteers. So I think that's an important message. What factors do you expect to impact the count? That I can tell you is probably a question you'll get from reporters, just from my experience. So, if you are seeing that rents continue to be very high in your county, if you're seeing that there's been a closure of shelter beds, any factors like that which you think will impact the count. In the past, the change in the chronic homelessness definition has impacted counts. Other factors that have changed the numbers or impacted the numbers are when youth providers have been more engaged. That has affected the count of homeless youth. Those are all things to keep in mind. And we've talked about this a little bit more, but thinking about who would be willing locally, whether from a service or housing provider perspective or the perspective of someone with experience of being homelessness, who would want to be interviewed locally. Having all these questions and the answers to these questions thought out before you speak to reporters will help you. Press materials that you can expect to see from Monarch will, by the end of this week, we'll send out a press advisory, probably less than one-page document, giving the specifics about the count, and that will include all of the information for the local press contacts. So if a reporter gets that, they know they want to report on this story locally, they can then pull off that sheet the information about who they can talk to locally about the count. I have sent some save the date emails to our full press list, so we have heard from some reporters that we know are saving the date and know the event is coming up, but the press advisory will have a little bit more information than the informal save the date email. And then a few days before the count, probably on Monday the 21st, we'll send out the full press release. We'll make sure you get a copy, and that is a document that, as I've said before, you all should feel free to edit and add some local information, add some local quotes. You'll see where we have quotes with a statewide perspective, and share that with your local contacts. As Lisa said, it's best to keep the number of quotes in the press release to, I think she had talked about having 3 quotes. If we find we have more relevant statewide quotes than 3, then we may have a separate sheet which had other quotes about the count. We typically share with the press what some best practices are around ending homelessness, a fact sheet around homelessness in New Jersey that typically uses the basic data from the previous year's count, so the basic data from the 2018 count, and then some frequently asked questions that reporters usually ask about the count in general. So I'm just talking about quotes a little bit more. Lisa gave us some good information, but as just to reiterate what she said, the reporters like and use quotes, especially if they're just pulling and using your press release or our press release word for word. So just thinking a little bit more about who would be good from your county to give a quote. Some kind of quote starters that we've used in the past that have worked well is our county or blank county participates in NJCounts because the NJCounts data helps us, and homelessness because we hope that the NJCounts results will, speaking positively about why you're doing the count and how it's going to help you. We'd love now to answer any questions that folks may have. You'll notice on your GoToWebinar sidebar, there's a box towards the bottom where you can ask a question. So we hope that you will take the time now to ask a question. Just while you all may be thinking about your questions, something else to think about in addition to reaching out to the press is all of the members of the congressional delegation, whether you have a new or a not new House member or our U.S. senators, they all have press offices, and that I have a list of, I've kept it up to date as best I can. I know there's been changes in a couple of the districts, but I can share with you who the press secretaries are in those offices. It never can hurt to let them know about the count. Not that they're necessarily going to publicize it, but they may hear about the count through their work and just put two and two together about what's going on back in the districts and back in New Jersey. So I can share that with you if that would be helpful. I see that someone has used the other feature of the webinar is you're able to raise your hand and ask a question. So I'm going to answer that question now, and then we'll certainly offer any other questions that you might have. Someone's asking if this PowerPoint will be sent out to us by email, and yes, it will. We're recording the webinar. We will get that into a file and have it in a format that we can send to you within the next few days. We also will post it on Monarchs blog and share it that way, but that's a great question. And then I notice here someone's interested in the list of press offices of elected officials, so we will share that. Again, for those of you that are in the congressional districts where there has recently been a new member elected, I actually was on the phone today trying to just get the basic contact information for some of those offices, and some of them don't yet have all the positions filled, but we will get you those press contacts as soon as we can. And we have on the phone with us Beth Joseph, who is with Jewish Family Services of Atlantic County, and they've had great success in reaching out to the press and getting press to come to the event. So Beth, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to what Lisa and I have said about working with the press and getting successful press coverage.
I think that you guys have really covered it pretty well. The only thing I would probably add is utilizing this as an opportunity not only for exposure, but to thank those that have participated. I know in our particular situation, we collect hundreds upon hundreds of coats, winter coats. We have many organizations and people that assist us with that. So using social media and PR as an opportunity to thank those that participate, the organizations, your partner organizations that are participating in this event with you, those that are circling around ending homelessness. In our situation, we work very closely with the local rescue mission and thanking them through your press releases and letting people know that, this is a multifaceted endeavor and that we need their help and we appreciate their help. And, it shows not only your mission, but also the mission of those that are working alongside you. So I think this event, this day is a great opportunity to promote your work, not only to talk locally about, you know, what you're doing, but to talk on the state level, like you guys said. I think another big thing that we've really tried to do is utilize the press that we've gotten from this for future grant applications and, you know, partnership applications or partnership outreach. So it's a way to say, like, here's what we're doing in black and white. Here's the coverage on this event that we did. Would you like to get involved for next year? Or can you fund XYZ for next year? So looking at it more than, you know, what it is for the day, but how can we leverage it for the future? And certainly grants and applications and partnerships is a big one there. And then I think you guys covered it really well, but controlling the content and really having the public understand what homelessness looks like in your particular area, because all throughout the state, it does look different. So, you know, somebody that is seeing North Jersey and seeing what the picture of homelessness looks like in North Jersey, that snapshot is very different where we are here in Atlanta County. So, you know, making sure you guys covered that very well, but making sure that that content is showing an accurate picture of what it looks like in your area. But I think everything was really helpful, and I think this is a really exciting day, and I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you very much, Beth. I'm just going to make one last call for questions. If I don't see any more pop up, we will close out this webinar. But as I said, we have been recording it. And I just want to thank Lisa for joining us from her office in Washington, and thank Beth for giving us the local perspective, and thanking all of you for taking the time out to join this webinar. We very much appreciate it. And please, the last slide before we close out has my information and Lisa's information. And please feel free, the contact information, to reach out to me if you have any questions once we conclude this webinar. Thanks very much, everybody, and I will look forward to hearing from you as we go forward to publicize the count.